So let's answer the question, what is financial aid? So financial aid is any money that will help your student pay for college. We can categorize it into three categories, however. And the three main types are grants and scholarships. That's gift aid, that is given to the student and the student does not need to repay. So that is the best type of financial aid. But also there are two other types. There's federal work study, and that's a federal program where students can get a job while they're a student. It makes the availability of many jobs on college campuses available to students. And then the student gets paid, gets a paycheck every week, every 2 weeks, and usually uses that money to pay for miscellaneous expenses throughout the academic year. So that's not something that you receive upfront to pay the bill, but it certainly makes it available to pay all of those incidental costs that happen while the student is enrolled. And lastly, federal student loans. And federal student loans are a very particular type of loan, and that's why they are also considered financial aid. So here is some more information about the federal student loans and why they are different than most other loans that we know about. Number one, the student is the sole borrower, and there's no credit check done. So student doesn't need a cosign or anything like that. The student is the borrower. And these loans also have two parts, a subsidized portion and an unsubsidized portion. And the subsidized portion means that the federal government pays the interest on that portion while the student is enrolled. Unsubsidized means that the federal government does not pay the interest on that one while the student is enrolled, but other than that, it's the same loan. Federal student loans usually have low fixed interest rates. Currently, the interest rate is 5.49, and that's the fixed interest rate for the academic year 23-24. And it usually changes every year around July 1st. One thing that's really special about these loans is all of the options the student will have when it comes time to repay. So no payments are due when the student is enrolled, but then they will have choices. If the student borrowed all of the federal loans that they are eligible for while a student, they would graduate with about $27,000 worth of federal student loans. So you can see the annual loan limits on the screen. As a freshman, a student can take $5,500. As a sophomore, the student can take $6,500. And as a junior or a senior, they can take $7,500. So that totals $27,000. And if the student decided upon graduation that they were going to choose the standard repayment plan, that would mean that their monthly payment after graduation would be about $300 a month for 10 years. But there are many other options for students. So a student who is going to take a job that they need for their career, but may not allow them to make that payment. Or maybe they have to move somewhere and live, and their housing is going to be too expensive to allow them to make that payment on the standard plan. They can choose one of the income-based repayment plans. And there are a number of them. And the newest of those is called the SAVE, S-A-V-E plan. And that allows a student to tie the payment to their income and pay a lot less. So at the time when the student is getting ready for repayment, they should, take all of that into consideration and make a good choice that makes sense for them. Additionally, these loans have some other benefits too, like deferment, forbearance, and forgiveness opportunities. Now, where does all this financial aid come from? Well, it comes from these sources. A lot comes from the federal government. Some comes from the states, and in this case, the state of Massachusetts. And the colleges and universities themselves have a lot of aid that they award to students. So you can see that big number at the bottom of the screen, $174 billion is the total amount awarded to students in the 21-22 academic year. So that's a lot of money. So students should definitely apply for financial aid to have access to all of that. Now, when a student goes through the financial aid process that I'm going to talk with you about in a minute, they are applying for all aid from the federal government, the state, and the colleges and universities themselves. The one type of process and aid that's a little bit different and that they do on the side on their own is there are other private scholarships out there, maybe through the student's high school, maybe through a parent's employer, or maybe through an online search for a large national scholarship. So that's the one piece that students do separate from the financial aid process. And you can see on the screen, we list a couple of online searches at mefapathway.org or at fastweb.com. They can use those sites to put in information about themselves and see if there are some private scholarships they can apply to. Also, check with your school counselor to see about the high school scholarships that are available or the town scholarships that are available. And financial aid is awarded based on two criteria, and sometimes a combination. But the first would be merit-based aid. And what is that? Merit-based aid is awarded in recognition of a student's achievements, mostly academic, but also athletic, artistic. Sometimes we hear about sports scholarships. We know people who have received those, and that's wonderful, and that's a merit-based scholarship or grant. But the truth is that most students, when they're receiving merit-based aid, it's usually for academic achievements. That's where the largest amount of that money comes from. And it's just good to know if you receive a merit-based award, you want to check with the college to see if that will be renewable or if there are any special requirements tied to that merit-based award. For example, it might let you know in your award documents that a student needs to keep a 3.0 grade point average to be able to keep that merit scholarship or something like that. So check with the individual colleges to make sure you know all of what's needed to keep those merit awards. Most of the time, your regular financial aid application will be enough to put you in line for the merit-based scholarships and your admissions application, I should say. But definitely look on the college website to make sure that there's not some other form you need to complete. And application deadlines for these things can be as early as November in the student's senior year. And then the other criteria is need-based aid. And need-based aid is awarded based on a family's financial aid eligibility. So that's determined by a standard formula, and that includes, the aid that is need-based includes grants, loans, and work study. And most financial aid is actually need-based. Be aware, though, students do need to be making satisfactory academic progress at a college to receive that.